Congressional hearings this week have raised new and troubling questions about the training ICE officers are receiving to help carry out the president's deportation mission. The testimony on the Hill comes as some law enforcement experts told the News4 I-Team they worry that damage from violent encounters with ICE officers in cities like Minneapolis will harm public trust in law enforcement for years to come. Tracee Wilkins has been investigating the immigration crackdown. She joins us now with the very latest. Tracee?
Well, Sean, violent scenes that played out in Minneapolis and other cities. Far cry from what the I-Team saw at the beginning of the Trump administration when we embedded with Maryland ICE for a day. Officers operated quietly and methodically, making arrests after hours of surveillance. Those are the tactics the man you're about to hear from remembers. But now, the former head of DC's or of ICE Baltimore's field office says he no longer recognizes the agency where he spent his career.
We were known as the Silent Service. What has happened now is it's unrecognizable.
Darius Reeves is proud of the decades he spent working in immigration enforcement, rising through the ranks to lead Maryland's ICE operations until he retired in May of last year.
We were the best at what we did and how we did it.
But he says he's disturbed over changes he saw begin under President Trump's deportation push last year.
There was never this thirst for numbers that I'm seeing now. 3,000 arrests per day. That's insanity.
Now he's among the number of law enforcement experts speaking out against the tactics immigration agents are using in their new mission, saying it's leading to too many violent encounters and harms the fragile relationship between the public and police everywhere.
It destroys the trust of the community.
There's no de-escalation. There's no communication. It's aggressive policing, it's excessive use of force.
Renee Hall leads the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives and says local police have spent decades repairing relationships with communities of color. Work she fears is being undone by what she called agents' questionable tactics and training.
Every law enforcement officer in this country pays for that.
Earlier this month, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons appeared in a pair of congressional oversight hearings into immigration agents' tactics after the high-profile killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis.
It's clearly evident that the public trust has been lost.
Lyons declined to comment on those ongoing investigations, but blamed protesters for some of the chaotic scenes that played out there.
The issue we were dealing with there is when we had organized groups, and I just was looking at, again, one of the flyers that was put out, when it said how to impede ICE operations and arrest.
Reeves said he'd never condone protesters impeding law enforcement operations.
But this is what we asked for by threatening these communities. People are going to come out and be part of the show.
Internal ICE emails obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by the nonprofit American Oversight show use of force incidents by ICE officers skyrocketed after Trump took office last year, showing 67 incidents between January 19th and March 20th of 2025, a nearly 300% increase from the prior year.
So each statistic that we reviewed, there are people behind that. Those are real human beings who are being impacted by those encounters.
Executive Director Chioma Chukwu leads the nonprofit watchdog group that sued the Department of Homeland Security for the documents reviewed by the I-Team.
We saw that the agency officials were more focused on assaults on law enforcement officers and finding ways to package that information so they could pursue more prosecutions.
We are facing the deadliest operating environment in our agency's history.
In public statements, the Department of Homeland Security said it's seen a 1,300% increase in assaults against its officers. The I-Team asked for a breakdown of those numbers, but DHS has not provided it. The violent clashes have heightened focus on what training federal immigration officers are receiving, especially as DHS seeks to hire thousands more officers now. Mark Brown trained ICE officers at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center known as FLETC from 2019 to 2024. He said when he was there, ICE officers received less defensive tactics training than other agencies and weren't trained in how to operate in chaotic urban environments like protests. When you were at FLETC, would you say that the training that the ICE officers received then prepared them for what they're doing now?
Based on what I observed in the training I conducted directly, no, it didn't.
We're not trained to be community police, and we're not trained to do crowd control.
In the Senate hearing, Lyons said DHS reduced the length of time new ICE officers train from around 75 days to 42. In a statement, an ICE spokesperson said the agency streamlined training to cut redundancy and incorporate technology advancements without sacrificing basic subject matter content.
My name is Ryan Schwank.
Then this week, a former ICE trainer turned whistleblower appeared on the Hill to counter that claim.
DHS told the public that new cadets receive all the training they need to perform their duties, that no critical material or standards have been cut. This is a lie.
We asked Reeves about that change in training.
I'm disappointed. Excuse me. Because you think that you can water down the training for something that's been 20 years over as if what we do doesn't matter.
He said part of what made ICE so successful was its partnerships with state and local police, partnerships that made their missions safer for everyone and that he knows are now strained in some parts of the country. I feel like this is an emotional topic for you because you've given so much of your life to this agency.
Yeah, I don't recognize it.
In a statement, a spokesperson from ICE said the agency has hired 12,000 new officers in the past year and that training for new recruits includes arrest techniques, defensive tactics, conflict management, legal and firearms training, Sean.
In the story there, you talked about the increase in the number of force complaints. How often are they receiving these use of force complaints?
Yeah, that's a good question. We tried to figure that out. At this point, it is unclear. Those numbers in the congressional hearings, Lyons did say they've investigated 37 use of force complaints against ICE officers since January of 2025. But we already know from the documents that we reviewed that there were far more complaints made. We asked ICE for the total numbers of use of force complaints filed since January of 2025. They said that we'll have to get that data through a Freedom of Information Act request. And of course, we're going to let you know when we receive that information. But the bottom line here and why you saw that Reeves was just so emotional is because not only does this training keep his fellow ICE officers safe and the public safe, but it has a lot to do with how other law enforcement perceive them and who wants to partner with law enforcement officers who are not doing what they're trained to do. So it just has a rippling effect. He is very concerned about his colleagues and the folks who he helped to train and what he is seeing right now. So it was a very emotional conversation for him when it came to talking about the training that they're not getting, and he is just deeply concerned about what's going to happen to them.
And ultimately that relationship is, as we mentioned, with the public, how the public perceive and relate to law enforcement.
Yeah, and it's not good right now for ICE. It's not, the public is not happy with what they're doing. But the point that he made is that somebody has to do this work, and it should be done in a dignified way that respects the rights of the citizens and non-citizens who are impacted by it.
100%. Thank you. Great story. We know you'll keep digging. All right.